Matt Van Buren in a bout against Corey Anderson.
When you look at Matt Van Buren, I met him on Wednesday, and you can tell that this kid is all business. He doesn't smile much. He doesn't talk very much. He says he has no idols, and he trains at Alliance MMA with Dominic Cruz. But when you peel all that back, man, Matt Van Buren is very aggressive, very good fighter, and he's a finisher. His opponent, Corey Anderson, is a kid that's been through a lot in his life, a lot of injuries. He's a grinder. He's a very hard worker. One of my teammates from the 2000 Olympic team said he's very, very impressed by this guy.
Impressive. And in the middleweight division, you got Diego Lima taking on Eddie Gordon. Eddie Gordon comes from that Chris Weidman camp. Very powerful individual. He's a captain of his football team at Fordham University, played defensive tackle. He's extremely strong. He's got some decent takedowns, but it's his power and his brawling inside the pocket that could lead him to victory against Lima. Lima, on the other hand, is a much lighter guy naturally than Gordon. He's very good everywhere. Slick on the feet, good on bottom. Should be a very interesting matchup.
And quite a good coach Frankie Edgar is. Apparently all his guys made it to the finals. Brian, it's time to get over to John Anecdote standing by at the expo to get the weigh-in started. Take it away, John.
What is up, Las Vegas, Nevada? Thank you all for coming out to the weigh-in. Our Octagon girls, Vanessa Hansen and Chrissy Blair. UFC President Dana White is in the building. The best matchmaker on the planet is Joe Silva. How about a hand? Lorenzo Fertitta is here. The second best matchmaker on the planet is Sean Shelby. And Burt Watson bringing up the rear. As usual, we begin with a prelim in the light heavyweight division on UFCFightPass.com. Robert Drysdale versus Keith BERISH. First fighter to the scale is Keith BERISH.
Tomorrow, two legends step into the octagon as number 3 ranked Frankie Edgar takes on BJ Penn in the Ultimate Fighter finale live from Las Vegas. Coverage begins with the pre-fight show at 6:30 p.m. Eastern as Red, White, and Fight Week concludes on Fox Sports 1 and streams live on Fox Sports Go.
.203 for Keith BERISH and his opponent Robert Drysdale.
One of the very best BJJ practitioners in the history of the sport, Robert Drysdale, finally makes his UFC debut. A staph infection forced him out of UFC 163. A failed drug test forced him out of UFC 167. BJJ fans have been waiting for this for a long time, and interestingly enough, he's 6-0. None of his fights have gone past the 3-minute mark. Pretty impressive.
Guys, Robert Drysdale has a gym out here in Las Vegas. You wouldn't believe the name call I could give right now of all the UFC fighters that train there. I walked in there one time, saw Frank Mir, Martin Kampmann, Vitor Belfort, Cesar Mutanchi. I mean, all kinds of guys over there love Robert Drysdale.
He's as good as they get in submission arts.
And these guys all call him coach. That's a big deal. They all call him coach.
Forrest Griffin.
All right, our next prelim on UFCFightPass.com comes in the women's bantamweight division. Sarah Cheesecake Morris versus Alexis Sneaky Zebra Dufresne.
Tuesday, July 15th, baseball's best gather in Minnesota as the captain Derek Jeter takes the field in his last All-Star game ever in what promises to be an emotional and unforgettable night. Special coverage begins at 4:30 on Fox Sports 1, followed by the 2014 All-Star game at 7:30 on Fox.
$143 for Alexis Dufresne. This fight will be
never been out of the first round.
At a catch weight of 143 pounds. Her opponent is Sarah Cheesecake.
Very overweight, guys.
Was that known, or is she just that heavy?
We'll find that out.
Yes.
Well, guys, just to clear something up, that was discussed prior, so Sarah knows that it is a catch weight, and you're probably wondering why she is called Cheesecake. Well, a friend of hers made a bet with her. If she came out to the song Cheesecake by the Muppets, way back when in her early portion of her career, the friend said she would bake her a cheesecake. She really wanted a cheesecake, so she said, I'll do it. Came out to the song, and she got a cheesecake, and the nickname just stuck. Her favorites, pumpkin cheesecake, followed by Oreo and cookie dough. Hopefully her opponent didn't eat too many cheesecakes before this fight.
Yeah, they should switch nicknames after that weigh-in.
139. 139 for Sarah MORAS.
See, they both knew that it was going to be a catch weight.
You guys might remember Sarah MORAS, of course, from Team Tate on The Ultimate Fighter.
All right, moving on now to the Ultimate Fighter finale prelims on Fox Sports 1. First up in the light heavyweight division, Patrick Walsh versus Daniel Dragon SPOHN. First fighter to the scale, Daniel SPOHN.
Tomorrow, it's a special edition of UFC Tonight. We'll look ahead to BJ Penn versus Frankie Edgar, plus 4 UFC champions will join Jay and Kenny at the UFC Fan Expo. UFC Tonight is tomorrow at 3:30 p.m. Eastern, only on Fox Sports 1 and streaming live on Fox Sports Go.
$205 for Daniel SPOHN and his opponent, Patrick Walsh.
Patrick Walsh was a semi-finalist on the Ultimate Fighter Season 19, fought for Team Edgar. He has won 4 out of his 6 fights. He has 2 wins by knockout. The guy is a purple belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, very aggressive fighter. I like seeing Patrick Walsh because all the 205-pound fighters are 6'2", 6'3". I'm 5'11". I'm glad to finally see somebody my size, and he almost kind of carries my body before he stepped on the scale. All right, this is my guy. I'm going for this guy.
All right.
206 for Patrick Walsh.
It looks like Patrick Walsh, after leaving the show, went to train with John Doomsday Howard, a long stay here in the UFC. Very aggressive fighter.
Yeah, very aggressive, and I just love his look. I think that guy should be on the cover of every magazine. I love his look.
All right, our next bout is in the lightweight division. Juan Manuel Puig versus Adriano Martins.
Guys, not only is Juan Manuel one of the top prospects coming out of Mexico, as you see him proudly holding the flag, he also has a degree as an executive chef and was a sous chef at a kitchen at a very famous hotel in Mexico. Now, the UFC actually selected him back in January of 2013 as one of the top prospects coming out of Mexico, sent him to the Jackson Winklejohn camp in Albuquerque. He also trained at AKA with, I think, some guy named Daniel Cormier. I saw Javier Mendez here with him as well. They seem to be very high on him and have groomed him for this moment. Of course, the UFC going to Mexico in November, so if he wins here, he could fight on that card as well.
Good. 155.
155 for Juan Puig. And his opponent, Adriano Martins.
Martins is a brown belt in judo, and then he started his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu career where he would eventually take 3rd place in the World Championships as a black belt. He actually started fighting on his friend's living room floor. They would do exhibition sparring matches there before he decided, you know what, I'm actually going to get some real training, do this for real. Had a very successful career before getting to the UFC.
Adriano Martins was so impressive in his UFC fights before he fought Cowboy Cerrone. We actually all picked him in Chicago in that fight, and actually, you know, he lost to Cowboy, but he did do pretty good.
I'm pretty sure, Daniel, you're forgetting something. I picked Cowboy to win that fight.
No, you didn't.
Yes, I did.
155 and a half.
DC, you know Brian doesn't lie.
Prove it, Stan. Prove that you picked it. Prove it. Guys, Juan has been at our gym for a little bit now, and the improvements that this kid has made in a short period of time is astounding. He's going to be, watching him tomorrow night, I'm excited because he's gotten better in his wrestling, his stand-up's gotten better, and his cardio was always good when he walked into the gym.
All right, moving on now in the bantamweight division, Jumabek Leopard Turson versus Leandro Brodinho Issa. First fighter to the scale, Leandro Issa.
Leandro Issa is a 2004 Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu world champion. He is a second-degree black belt, and he trains at Evolve MMA down in Singapore. You see a lot of guys heading over to Asia to train. It's booming over there, and Leandro Issa is one of the guys in the UFC that trains out in Singapore, trains out in Asia.
$135 and a half.
135 and a half for Leandro Issa. And his opponent making his United States debut, Jumabek Turson.
Jumabek might just be the toughest guy on this card. Growing up in China, he played two sports. Follow me here. Kokpar and Odarispak. Now, Kokpar, aka Buskachi, is this starting to sound familiar? Is a horse-mounted game when players attempt to drag a goat carcass toward a goal. The other game is when two guys are on top of a horse and you have to wrestle your opponent off of the horse. Remember, Siar Bahadurzada also played this. This is the most amazing stuff I've ever heard. I'd love to play these games.
$136.
136 for Jumabek Turson.
He can also fight, guys. He's won 17 of his last 18 fights.
Daniel, you played some of those sports, didn't you?
Yeah, I mean, I've got an extensive history in Zaisa or whatever he just said.
Goat carcass.
Goat carcass pulling.
Goat carcass.
Goat carcass pulling.
What a rope.
All right, now to the featured bout of the prelims on Fox Sports 1. It comes in the lightweight division. Jesse, the body snatcher Ronson versus Kevin, the Motown phenom Lee.
Kevin Lee is called the Motown Phenom. We know the fighting history out of Detroit. Tommy Hearns, Lennox Lewis, and all the guys out of the Kronk gym. He has that fighter spirit. Kevin Lee was 10-0 as an amateur, 7-1 as a pro. He is looking to get his first UFC win tomorrow night. He did move his camp to Las Vegas because he lost his UFC debut.
$156.
156 for Kevin Lee.
To carry that nickname, you better be able to fight.
His opponent, Jesse Ronson.
Well, speaking of nicknames, this guy is the body snatcher, and he does not lack confidence. Jesse Ronson said about his opponent, Kevin Lee, he's a good athlete, but he hasn't paid his dues yet. He will, and he's got plenty of time to improve after I beat him.
Jesse Ronson has won 8 of his last 10 fights, and he's got 6 wins by KO. Finished 6 opponents in the first round as well.
$155.
155 for Jesse Ronson. All right, now we get to the main card for the Ultimate Fighter finale. First up in the flyweight division, Justin Tank Scoggins versus Dustin Ortiz.
Dustin Ortiz, one of the brightest prospects in the flyweight division. He trains under Duke Rufus, one of the best coaches in all MMA, and he's known for having very technical fighters and technical game plans. But Ortiz actually said, I don't like very detailed game plans. I'm a guy that likes to react once I get in there and make my adaptations in between rounds. So he actually tells Duke Rufus not to come up with that complicated game plan. Rarely do you hear fighters give that kind of feedback to your coaches.
125 for Dustin Ortiz.
Information like that is why this should be called the Brian Stan
And
Show.
his opponent, Justin Tank Scoggins.
A black belt in Kempo Karate, the 22-year-old Scoggins is the 5th youngest fighter on the UFC roster, yet he raised some eyebrows after his debut win a few months back when he said he is the very best flyweight in the world, and why not? He's been doing martial arts since he was 3, and around 5 he got the nickname Tank because he used to rough guys up. He's got a ton of confidence, and I'd say a pretty sweet beard as well.
One of the more creative strikers in the flyweight division. This guy's got some of the most beautiful kicks.
$124 for Justin Scoggins.
Okay,
That is a great
last
fight
week
to
I said
kick
I
off
hated
the
when
main
guys wear the
card,
jersey
ladies
of the
and
tongue.
gentlemen.
Let's stop with the youngest guy in the division, because next month somebody else is going to be the 5th youngest guy in the UFC. Ariel.
What? It's important to note.
All right, next up in the heavyweight division, Derek the Black Beast Lewis versus Guto Innocente.
I remember going to the UFC fighter meetings a couple years ago, and Guto Innocente was there with Rashad Evans and all those guys, and they could not stop beaming about this kid. I remember he was supposed to make his strike for his debut. It got pushed back. He finally got into the cage, and he was very impressive. Then his UFC debut got pushed back, but it was at 205. He's now back up at heavyweight. These guys cannot stop praising Guto Innocente.
$232 for Guto Innocente.
Look at how big this kid is at
And
232
his
pounds.
opponent, Derek the Black Beast Lewis.
Lewis overcame a troubled childhood, which actually led to him serving 3.5 years in prison for aggravated assault. After getting out, he showed a lot of promise as a boxer, and George Foreman himself actually took him under his wing, and a lot of people were trying to get him to go into boxing, but he always loved MMA. He was always intrigued by it, and he took that route instead. So far, it has paid off for him. He's 10-2, coming off a first-round TKO in his UFC debut back in April.
All right, big guy, hold it up. Good job. 264.
264 for Derek Lewis.
Going to $185 now, right? All right, bud.
All right, now we get to the Ultimate Fighter middleweight final. The last 2 men standing, Diego Lima and Eddie Truck Gordon.
Gordon is actually a high school friend of middleweight champion Chris Weidman and trains with him right now. He earned the nickname Truck when his brother gave it to him when he was just 130 pounds playing football, which is actually his first love. He would run all over people, and he kind of grew into the nickname when he ballooned to 285 pounds. He said, quote, "I think Lima is going to find out when I hit him why they call me Truck."
186.
186 for Eddie
And I should
Gordon.
say, as a half Jamaican, that Eddie Gordon is Jamaican along with Uriah Hall, who'll be fighting tonight at UFC 175.
I've trained with Diego Lima since he started his career when he was a manager at Home Depot and just got onto the mats. He's come so far in every single fight. He gets that roadmap shaved into his head, and every single fight I make fun of him for it, so why stop now?
185.
185 for Diego
It's a mount to
Lima.
wear, Brian.
I think he got lost on the way to the gym one time, so he shaved that in so he never does again. But this kid, he's a great father, just a great all-around human being, and I can't believe how far he's come in the last 3 years.
Brian, as good as his brother is, and now to hear that he trains with you, he has no choice but to be good.
Suck up.
All right, now we get to the Ultimate Fighter light heavyweight final. Corey Beaston 25-8 Anderson versus Matt Gunner Van Buren.
As I said at the top of the show, Matt Van Buren is all about his business. As I said, no heroes. This guy trains with Dominic Cruz. He has a ton of good guys in his gym. This guy told the UFC, he got his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu blue belt in 2009, so he was doing really, really good. It was right after he started. But then he just decided, I don't fight in a gi, so I'm never training in a gi, and he hasn't been promoted since.
Steady, Eddie.
206 for Matt Van Buren.
But if you ask Matt, hey Matt, when is your next promotion? He'll just stare at you. He won't even say a word. I'm here to fight.
Corey Anderson actually broke his leg in 3 places his freshman year in college when he was wrestling. So to rehab it, he started boxing. And that's where he developed the footwork style he used in his collegiate wrestling career before being discovered by a guy named Ben Askren and then tricked to coming into the gym with Duke Rufus. He told him, hey, we're wrestling tomorrow at this address, be there. And it turned out they were sparring.
Hey, hold on, man.
$204 for Corey Anderson. Involved in tomorrow night's 5-round featherweight main event. Take a look.
It feels great to be back in the UFC. I haven't fought too much over the last 2 years, so I'm pretty excited. You know, it's going to be interesting. I always knew I could compete with these guys. You know, I always knew that there was nobody in the UFC that was going to come in and bring a bunch of techniques that I never saw before. And so I kind of watch the sport, see how far it's evolved, and revamp myself and see if I can compete at this level. This opportunity to come back into the UFC came up because I was talking to Dana White and I was telling him I want to come back and fight again. And Dana said, why do you want to come back and fight and this and that? And I said, because if I get a few victories, I can fight Frankie Edgar. And then he said, you want to fight Frankie Edgar at 145 pounds? So I just told him immediately, yes, I'll take the fight, I'll drop the weight, and you know, here I am now.
I fought BJ twice, and this 3rd time I'm gonna, you know, repeat again with the answer. The fact that BJ is really wanting to get revenge at me, that kind of motivates me to make sure it doesn't happen. I feel like I'm in my prime. I feel like since the last time we fought, I've gotten much, much better, and I think he's gonna see a lot different with Frankie Edgar than he did the last time.
This is the beginning of a comeback story for BJ Penn, and it all starts with my greatest rival, Frankie Edgar.
You know, I want to be able to finish BJ and walk away with 3-0, hand raised. And I think a big, definitive win over BJ just puts me one step closer to the title.
This is going to be a battle, but the difference is, this time, I'm going to have more firepower than Frankie and take him out.
First fighter to the scale, the former 2-division UFC champion, the prodigy, BJ Penn.
My very first UFC event was UFC 101 when BJ Penn fought Kenny Floor, and I'd never seen anything like it before. I got to meet BJ Penn. To this day, I am still in love with BJ Penn. I meet him, and I look at him, and I'm almost shy because I'm just in awe of his greatness. BJ Penn is looking for his 3rd title in 3 divisions as he moves down to 145 pounds.
Right on the money, 145.
145 for BJ Penn.
Can't say enough about how good he looks. He's a guy who's been known to have struggled with weight cuts previously.
Lightweight champion of the world, Frankie Edgar.
You know, Frankie's known as one of the toughest guys in the UFC roster. He's come back from brutal 1st and 2nd rounds to win big-time fights. No difference. He actually started his fight career in an underground fight league in New York City where the sport is still banned, and he had his orbital bone broken in his first ever fight in that organization. He ate a meal before he went to the emergency room. That's how tough this guy is.
145 and a half.
145 and a half for Frankie Edgar.
Up here on the desk, we call Frankie the little engine that could, because there is nothing you can do to stop him from trying to pursue victory. Man, I'm torn. I love Frankie Edgar, too.
You do have a couple of man crushes out there.
You do.
Dan.
Yeah, I think I'm too big a fan to actually be sitting up here, right?
All right, Vegas, we're here with the former two-division UFC champion, BJ Penn. I know you asked the UFC for this fight. Why will the third time be the charm for you against Frankie Edgar?
I'm ready. Frankie asked to fight me the last couple times, and this is the one I wanted, and I'm here to give him my best shot.
Good work on the weight. Best of luck tomorrow night.
Thank you, and I want to thank all the fans for being here. I'm still fighting because of you guys.
All right, Frankie Edgar, you've been on top of the MMA world before. What is it about this matchup that made you want to fight him a third time?
You know, he keeps calling my name. He wants to get revenge, but I'm not going to let it happen, man. I'm going to put him away Sunday.
All right, best of luck making it 3 in a row. Frankie Edgar, ladies and gentlemen, thank you all so much for coming out. We'll see you tonight for UFC 175 and for the finale tomorrow night.
All right, thank you very much, John Anik, for the action at the weigh-in. Guys, everything's over. People have made weight, except for the ladies. That is now at a catch weight, but I want to hear your first impressions.
Oh, obviously, BJ Penn. This is a guy who struggled to make weight at 155 pounds. People questioned his motivation when he said he wanted to come back. He looked phenomenal today at 145 pounds. Look at the energy he had in that interview. We used to see BJ Penn get dragged on stage for weigh-ins. Now he's the lowest weight he's ever fought at, and he looked fantastic.
The motivation BJ must have had to come in looking like this at 145 pounds was crazy. But, guys, Frankie Edgar looked ripped. I've never seen Frankie look so good. We always thought Frankie should be down at 145 or maybe even 135. But after seeing Frankie Edgar today on the scale, lean, ripped up, I don't want to see him go any lower. He has finally found the weight division for him, and 145 is that weight division.
And he's got an extreme amount of motivation. He said the hardest part about doing The Ultimate Fighter was the layoff. He beat Charles Oliveira. He's ready to fight. I think Frankie Edgar very, very motivated tomorrow night. Well, keep it locked on Fox Sports 1 all weekend long. Today we've got the UFC 175 pre-fight show at 7 p.m. Eastern, with the prelims starting at